Hi, and welcome to this second episode on how to become a technical diver. If you haven't watched the first installment of this 3-video series, just click right here and it'll take you to a link to the first video. And the second video is about the equipment. What kind of equipment do you need to do technical diving? So join me and I'll go to it step by step. Obviously we need some tanks, so a double 12 is a preferred tank size. In Europe these are readily available. If you're over in the States it might be a twin 80 cubic feet or low pressure 110s or something like that, but roughly the equivalent of 24 liters of means 4,800 liters of compressed gas. So double 12 in this case is perfect. No boots, no nets, not necessary, just a manifold that doubles like this. Make sure your valves are all nice and lubricated so they turn nice and great, but the tank alone doesn't get us there. We also need a wing. Voila, one wing. So what we need is a wing between 18 and 25 liters of lift, a single bladder wing with a short inflator hose. I mean, not one of these long ones that extend all the way down here. A dump valve, no plastic rubber thingy, just a piece of string. 2 D-rings on your chest, 1 D-ring on the left hand side. I've gone for the small half D-ring on the left hand side as well. That is something we learned from Sidemount diving, is when your Deco or stage bottles become very light. After you've used them, you can move them one level down and they stay better in trim beside you. That's a nice little pro tip. And obviously a crotch strap with a D-ring in the front for a scooter and a D-ring in the back for accessories. When you think about the harness, it should be a single piece harness. No buckles, no clips, no adjustments needed. We'll set it up correctly and you'll be good to go. Again, there's another video on how to set up a DIR harness. I'll put that also in the description down below. There's some systems with it's just like, some call it a kinch system, some is an adjustable harness where it's still one piece. Those are okay, but I only suggest those if you really switch between almost Arctic diving with a dry suit full with underwear, or tropical diving where you're diving in a when you use the backplate and harness on a single tank wing with a thin wetsuit. In the other case, one adjustment for the harness is enough for all kinds of diving. That's what I do. On the side of the backplate you can see there's a little attachment, some mounting hardware for the Argon bottle. So obviously we also need an Argon bottle. And there's the Argon bottle. We call it an Argon bottle, but usually in reality it's filled with air. You can fill it with Argon, but it'll give you a marginal gain. It takes a lot of, flushing of the inner suit for the maximum gain to be reached when using Argon, so normal air is just fine. It's mounted with the one strap around the little tank here. In this case it's an aluminium tank, 0.8 liters, and the little bungee on the bottom part of the backplate, which is just looped around the valve like this. On the dry suit inflation tank, there's obviously a little regulator. You can use a little tiny compact first stage with an overpressure release valve, the shortest inflator hose almost as you can get, and we'll mount it there. It's a normal thin valve. As you can see, the hose is routed underneath the hip strap, but when you put the suit on and the harness on, it'll go straight onto the valve, so it doesn't go underneath this like it normally would when it comes from the left post. So straight to your valve like this, underneath this one, so it doesn't interfere with your D-ring. That way it's routed correctly. Then what about the regulators? Let's start with the right side. Your right primary regulator holds the inflator hose for your wing and your long hose. Long hose is routed as streamlined down as possible, and the same goes for the inflator hose. Make sure that the length of the inflator hose matches the length of your low pressure inflator. Now I would suggest having these like inner tube bungees on your set so that you can keep everything nice and tidy. And then the bungee that actually is attached to the left chest D-ring goes over the low pressure inflator hose, but not also over your inflator hose from your regulator. That way it can never get lost behind your shoulder because it's stuck there. The reason why we don't put it all the way over here or over both is that it can be caught and then dislodge your inflator coupling, and you don't want that to happen. So we either do it only over this one or only over the low pressure inflator, just to make sure that you don't dislodge your inflator coupling. Now for the left post. The left post regulator holds our necklace, second stage. It holds our SPG. Doesn't have to be a very long one, just as short as you can go about, so that it keeps nice and tidy to your body. And if you're not diving with Trimix, an inflator hose for your dry suit. In this case it's a little bit longer one with an air gun, because I use this for training purposes when I use the air gun to simulate realistic failures on the twin set underwater during training. The necklace bungee is zip tied onto the mouthpiece. So in this case I've just replaced the zip tie that holds the mouthpiece on originally with another one, and I incorporated this bungee. This is a nice, what they call surgical tubing, a bit old school like that, but you can use any type of bungee. Just don't go too thick, it needs to be reasonably flexible. Make sure it's in there permanently, so it's not one of those that just moves over the mouthpiece that you can pull out, because this one is not to be shared, it is only for you around your necklace. So a permanent nice necklace that's not too long and permanently attached, you're good to go. What about accessories? Well, we need lights, for example. We need a primary light and at least one backup light. In non-overhead environment diving, one backup light suffices. 2 backup lights are nice. If you do overhead environment, 2 backup lights are necessary. Both the primary light and the backup light, if you only have one, go on the right chest D-ring. I've removed the long hose for now so you can see. I put my primary light on the inside, because that way I can reach it with my left hand. And I put my backup light in the middle. Now my long hose can come on the outside. This way I know the order in which they are. The backup light is just mounted with one of these bungees on the webbing. That way it keeps it nice and tidy. The secondary advantage to doing that, it is also keeping the D-ring down, so it's easier to clip on and clip off. The primary light should be a strong light. It can either be a canister light like this, where you only hold the light source in your hand and the battery is attached to the harness. Nowadays battery capacities are so good that you get really strong, long-lasting primary lights that are 1 unit, so those are also a possibility. So that's almost done for the almighty twin set. If you're diving in a side mount configuration, I personally like the UTD Z system because it's the most consistent when it compared to the side mount system, or with the back mount system. So because everything is roughly the same, the long hose comes from the right side, necklace from the left side, the harness is the same, all the things stay consistent. What do we do for weights? If the weight of the tanks and the back plates is not enough, we can add weights to this. We can use a V weight, which is like a V-shaped weight that basically goes in between your tanks, or you can use a tail weight, which is usually also V weight, but it goes lower on your tank, and you can add those. If necessary, you could just use a normal weight belt, but usually the weight of the tanks and the back plates offset enough weight for you to use this tank set as it is. Obviously we need Deco and stage cylinders. Deco cylinders used for the decompression part of the diving, and stage cylinders as a part of the bottom gas. A stage cylinder is an unmarked cylinder, meaning there's no depth-based decals on the sides of the tank, just an analyzing label. Otherwise the tank is completely clean. A Deco cylinder has a depth decal, in this case oxygen 6 meters. This is a bit of a hack with a piece of tape, because it's rental cylinders here from local dive center, and obviously the analyzation label, but this is what you can tell the difference. The regulator just needs to be a good O2 service, O2 clean regulator with a 1 meter hose and a short 15 centimeter hose SPG. It can be what any make you want, just make sure that it's O2 clean and that the hose is 1 meter long. The stage kit is a stage kit made with one piece of string with a tank band here and 2 rubber bungees to keep everything nice and tidy. So you don't need any clips or anything, balls or any other stuff in there, just 2 rubber bungees and the kit. The way we've attached this SPG to this first stage is by using a bungee, and the bungee is just basically a little loop. Let's see if I can take it off. A little loop like this, which is roughly the same size as your hand, and that way you can actually easily detach the bungee and the SPG. That way you can relieve the pressure of this high pressure hose a little bit, because they get, you know, worn and put on a lot of stress if they're completely tight wound up all the time. So this way you can just easily replace or relieve the tension. This bungee though stays there like so, and you can also use that when you have the tank dismount or the regulator dismounted from your set. You can hang it on the valve like this and it doesn't hang in the sand. It's a very handy little trip. Then when you need it, all you do is you attach the first stage, move your SPG in place and keep it in place by the little bungee. Happy days. Size wise, I prefer to use the 40 cubic feet tanks for either nitrox or nitrox 50 or 100% oxygen. You can use an 80 cubic feet as well as a nitrox 50 bottle or as a stage bottle. This is a 7-liter tank. Personally, I prefer to use either 40 or 80s because of buoyancy characteristics, but as long as it's an aluminium tank, you're good to go. Exposure protection. What do we need there? Well, 99% of your technical diving is going to be done in a dry suit, and mostly because of balanced rig issues, because when you dive deeper down it gets colder, your wetsuit gets compressed, and you all know the story about the balanced rig. So when we look at a dry suit, we want to look at a trilaminate dry suit. Means it's like a shell dry suit. Either that or a reasonably thin neoprene is also doable, but primarily a trilaminate dry suit we advise. 2 large cargo pockets on the sides, and let's look at what's in those pockets. Here we are, all the pockets contents displayed out. Let's start with the right side pocket, our primary pocket. In the primary pocket we'd usually have the things we expect to use on the dive, but always we have our SMB in there, our wet notes. I have a leash in the top flap here and an extra double ender. Never know when that comes in handy, but you can put all sorts of stuff in there. If you have a small reel you know you're going to use on the dive, put it in there. A small camera, put it in there. Anything you know you're going to use on the dive, you can put it in there if it fits, obviously. So right side is our primary pocket. Everything is attached in the pocket on these bungees. So there's bungee loops in every compartment of the pocket, like a bungee loop here, a bungee loop there, and in this nice pocket it has a designated place for the wet node. A nice little, you know, thin, low profile pocket inside the pocket. On the left pocket, which is considered to be our backup pocket, we'd have our backup mask, also on a bungee, the double ender. I have a pair of scissors or a backup cutting device, a backup spool or safety spool, again an extra double ender, and in this case I have a what you call the John line. It's basically a piece of flat string here that I can attach to an upline if there's a current and I am free of holding on to the upline, and I can use a John line instead of my hands. Makes gas switching a lot easier. Now, last but not least, we need a mask, obviously. Low volume mask that fits you well, with a neoprene strap preferably, not the silicone it comes with. Our fins, short, stiff rubber fins. Short and stiff because we like it, because it gives us a better feedback with the water. Stainless steel springs or rubber springs or whatever, anything like springy, so we don't have to have these flaps adjusted. And the stainless steel springs, they never break. These are about 16 years old. Instruments, a bottom timer and a compass. Bottom timer can be also one of these nice ones with a LED display or something like that, but anything that can tell you depth and time, and a compass for direction. That's all you need. Now, I show these in one go because what I usually do is I fold up the strap of the mask like this, put my bottom timer and my compass in there, and the whole package goes in my fin pocket. This way it stays nice and compact and nice and protected. And then I take my hood and I roll the hood up, and the hood goes in the other fin pocket. Off we go. Finally, when you want to do technical diving, it's a good idea to invest in your own analyzer. If you want to go all in, a helium analyzer is very nice, especially if you travel around and you don't want to rely on the diving stations having a reliable helium analyzer. They're not cheap, but hey, diving isn't cheap. So, and a spares box. I mean a spares box with like some piece of string, some seals for the dry suit, some O-ring kits for the regulator, bit of glue, valves, you know, do whatever, you know, go all in if you want. I mean, there's tools inside, extra hoses, extra SPGs. Just you know, make it as complete as you can afford.